Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is Scott Price. Thanks for being on the show, Scott.
Thanks for having me on the show, Whitney. Appreciate it.
Yeah, Scott and his wife leads Bonvolo Real Estate Investments, LLC. Together, they own a growing portfolio of multifamily, single-family, office, medical, retail, and land investments. Scott brings over 15 years of experience in real estate. And thanks again, Scott. And why don't you tell us or start with how you got into real estate and a little more of your background?
Sure. Yeah. Well, going back before 15 years, basically, I did a lot of research on how people developed wealth and income, and always heard about the one-shot wonders like Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg, but those are kind of hard to replicate. And when I kind of went into other industries, I started finding, well, there may not be household names, but there certainly are people who do very well with real estate if they stick with it and have good processes and things like that. And it may not be as glamorous to some, but it seems more achievable for more people. So I started investigating, did a whole bunch of research on my own. I actually got my broker's license and primarily for investing purposes. And while I was working W-2 jobs, primarily in team management and program management positions, mostly with technology companies, I was half-time doing my real estate investing and gradually growing our portfolio. And then about 4 years ago, we got to the point where we were comfortable with my wife going full-time in her business while I was still working half-time. And then earlier this year, I'm now also half-time, and I'm not doing W-2 jobs anymore. I'm full-time investing and managing our existing portfolio, which we've mostly grown organically. And what I mean by that is we've rolled our profits forward from prior properties and try to create a flywheel effect to buy more.
So before we get into where your business is at currently and moving forward, I think a lot of people listening to the show are in that position where, they're thinking about leaving their W-2, but they're not sure they're there. And, how did you have confidence to say, okay, we're going to do this. We can do it. I'm pulling the trigger or cutting it off, however you want to say it. I'm leaving my W-2 job and going to pursue this.
Sure. Yeah, it was really a combination of things. I would say, first off, we wanted to make sure, of course, that we could cover all of our expenses plus, and have some nice buffer and be able to still save for extra things and things like that. And we actually achieved that a while ago. So it was partly a matter of me being conservative. And what I mean by that is I could have left my W-2 job earlier, but it was nice, of course, to have all the benefits and all that kind of stuff. But more importantly, like I said, we would roll our profits forward. So all the income I was making from my real estate investing, I was not using to pay the bills. And I was reinvesting it either back into those properties to improve them or to purchase new properties. And we finally got to a point where, number one, we were comfortable enough with the income that was coming in to cover everything plus, and then also to have be liquid enough to be able to address any big expenses, a new roof that comes up or something like that. It's not just the monthly, you got to be ready for the capital expenses as well. And to be comfortable enough with the quality of our portfolio that it wasn't going to be dipping down, or we felt good in the consistency of everything. So really, when all those things came together, then it was really a matter of picking a date, and really just did that back in March of this year, actually.
Well, congratulations!
Thank you.
It's a big day.
Yes, it definitely was. It felt great, and it's allowed me to focus on other things. Like we just built a home, and that we've been working on and been focusing on that. And then after we get done unpacking our cardboard boxes that we're currently unpacking, then I'm going to be able to focus even more on my business full time.
Nice. So your experience is in a lot of different areas. You've single family, multifamily, office, medical. I mean, just to name a few, retail, land investments. How did you educate yourself to do so many different aspects, of the real estate business?
Yeah, I did take, I took a lot of courses. I went to seminars. I read a lot of books, went to a lot of RIA and meetup events, did a lot of networking, even did a few mastermind type groups. So got pretty diversified in terms of the sources of information, both what I would call static information, things like books, and then interactive information of talking to people and learning of people who had been there, done that. And that was a big part of it. And the other thing was, for me, I felt comfortable and I feel comfortable knowing enough about particular asset classes that I could go into a deal, especially if it was a particularly good deal, and understand enough to really jump in. And some people believe in focusing on one asset class, and I think that actually makes a lot of sense. That is completely valid, and you can get really good at it, and you just specialize on that. Our approach was more opportunistic. In other words, looking for really good opportunities and understanding enough across the board to be able to say, okay, that's a good deal or not. And also, most importantly, understanding the difference between the criteria that is needed between all those different asset classes, because they're definitely different. It's not just NOI. It's not just rent and income kind of stuff. It's how you select and what you got to think in terms of tenants and how the property is maintained and managed is different between those asset classes.
Nice. So now that you've been in the real estate, quite a few years, you've left your W-2 job, you are now you're educating yourself to move to another step in the real estate business, or bring another arm onto your company, and which is a syndication business. And I think that's why you're going to be a great guest too, because a lot of people that are going to listen or listening to the show today are going to be in your shoes, or maybe they still have their W-2 job, but they have some rentals, or they have some type of real estate investments, and then they're looking to start a syndication business. Tell us, some ways that you're moving forward to start the syndication side of your business, and how you're educating yourself.
Sure. So like anything, whether you're doing syndication or buying on your own, a lot of it boils down to deal flow and capital. And of course, the syndication side primarily helps with the capital. And so we're focusing on both. And I've taken a very conservative approach of slowly and organically growing my portfolio, which is nice because I completely control it. I have had a couple debt investors, but that's not a typical syndication. I now next I'm going to get into equity investors as well. And really making the jump to syndication is a matter of, especially now that I'm full-time and have more time to devote to it, is a matter of growing our business even more. And there's a certain self-limiting amount that, although we do have good properties making good cash flow, if I'm just waiting to be able to build up enough down payment for the next property, then that's somewhat self-limiting from a time perspective. So that's really why we're jumping in. In terms of how, I've definitely been educating myself quite a bit. I've been going to seminars on it. I've been working with several attorneys on it. I've got them all lined up, ready to go. I've been reading quite a bit about it, and all of my experience in property management and managing the properties themselves, or managing the manager, meaning managing the property manager, things like that, working with teams, is all set me up. Plus, on top of that, with my background in team management and program management, I'm going to apply that to working with other investors, in terms of managing the communications, the expectations, the finances, things like that. And so basically getting myself well educated, getting a good team behind me, and then just having the background that is really experienced managing my own properties, which did not put any investors' money at risk. And now, okay, I've got all that experience. Now I feel very comfortable bringing in other investors' money.
So you mentioned you're reading a lot, but give us maybe a book or a couple books or something that's really helped you to educate yourself, to give you the confidence to move into the syndication business.
Yeah, well, let's see, there's a number of things. Some of them are seminars where they will actually like sell you, books that they're not anything you can get on Amazon. I started out with those. Some of those were helpful. Some of those are a bit of a sham, but you gotta pick and choose as you go the guru route. So I've done some of those. More recently, there have been some good ones. For instance, let's see here, Gene Trowbridge, he has a book out, and don't remember the name of it offhand, but I've read that one.
It's a whole new business.
Yes, thank you. Joe Fairless has a new one, just came out. I just started it. So about apartment syndications.
Got it here.
There you go. So that one should be good because he's done quite a few. And so those are two. And beyond that, there aren't many. There's a lot of information out there. I'm sure there are others, but most of my information has been oriented toward learning all the SEC rules and getting information about that, which comes in a whole bunch of different formats. Like I said, the courses, but on top of that, I can read blogs about this stuff. I go to meetings about it, things like that. So it's all different kinds. But those two books that I mentioned, including the one that you held up, would be two that I recommend certainly to get started.
Yeah, for those that are listening or not watching, it was held up the Best Ever Apartment Syndication book by Joe Fairless, which I highly recommend. So you mentioned deal flow and capital. So, tell us some ways you're working on raising capital right now.
Yeah. So, it's been a combination of things. Number one, there's history up to now, and then there's my next step. The history up to now is recently because I've been building my home. I've been pausing a little bit, but the history up to now is really I've been letting people know what I'm doing, what I'm going to be doing, and essentially getting a list of investors. It's really what it boils down to, of potential investors, people who are interested. And I'm somewhat known a little bit in the area. I've been involved in some of the RIAs, and I'm a known presence, and people know that I've had successful investments. And some people just approach me, which is great. I love that. And then other times I'll tell folks about what I'm doing, and they'll say, "Hey, I'd be interested in seeing a deal that you may have coming up." So that's been the organic growth approach that I've taken probably over the last couple of years because previously working at W2 and then building my home, it's kind of like, okay, now here soon, going to be ready to jump into syndication. So that's my base of investors. And then as far as going forward for investors, I plan to do a couple things. One of them is to be marketing on a monthly basis. We've already put a template together in terms of structure and stuff, but basically putting together a newsletter, essentially, something to keep me and what we're doing top of mind with people, and just be an e-newsletter, so something that gets emailed. So that's one thing. And then the other thing is, of course, to work on the deal flow side, and which I've started recontacting my existing contacts and say, hey, pretty soon here, after I get fully moved in, we're going to be hitting the ground running here again. So getting that word out as well.
So moving forward, you're moving into the syndication. Are you going to syndicate, all the different types of asset classes like we talked about? Or are you going to focus on multifamily or focus on office or, one or the other?
Yeah, I am initially going to focus on multifamily, although I own office and retail. Unless it's a screaming deal or in a really solid location, there are just a lot of things going on in those spaces right now in terms of the overall market. Everything from the Amazon effect to the WeWork effect to how the average space per worker is going down, to the implementation of technology. There's a whole bunch of things, and still office and retail can be a great opportunity, but there can be a little bit more risk there. Whereas multifamily, as long as you understand the local demographics, the local drivers, the economy, what's in the pipeline for being constructed, what's your competition in that ABC class, and that kind of stuff, it's generally a little lower risk, which is what I want if I'm going to bring in other people's money. And then also, it's also an easier to understand story as well for investors. When you get into 5 and 10-year leases with somebody that may or may not still be around as a company and all this kind of stuff. It can be a little more complicated for some investors, but multifamily people tend to understand, place to live.
Sure. Could you elaborate on the terms Amazon effect and WeWork effect? I think most of us probably have an understanding, but if you could, you're in the business, you're in the commercial space, office space, and retail. Could you just elaborate on what that means?
Sure. So for Amazon effect, what I meant there is that, for instance, for retailers, there is a significant effect on people going online to do their shopping, or in some cases, they may even go into a store, try something out, and then go online to buy it, which is the worst scenario for a retailer because they've just spent time, inventory, staff, and space for somebody to buy something somewhere else. But that's increasing. It's not the whole market. There's still a lot of businesses that are doing very well in the retail space, but you have Toys R Us is gone, Sears is going. There's definitely, and there's major mammoth companies that have been around for years are feeling the effects of those kinds of things, and that goes all the way down to the mom and pop level too. Meaning, small storefronts are also feeling the same kind of thing. And when you can even order your flowers online and not necessarily go to the local florist, it can make things more difficult there. So definitely opportunity, just got to be very, very particular. In the office space, so what I was referring to there is you're getting more into, not everywhere, certainly, but you're getting percentage increases of things such as a shared office space where you may actually, where a company may only rent a room, or they may share a room. They may not even own that room or have a lease on that room for all day. They might just have it for 4 hours, and then they share on an appointment the conference room. And that keeps their costs low, but it significantly reduces the amount of office space that is demanded. So you've got to, and that tends to be more in the large markets, not so much in smaller markets, but you do get those kind of effects as well. There's also a big effect on technology that's being implemented, and it's affecting office space as well as retail. And for instance, more virtual workers, meaning people will work from home. So there are lots of considerations. And if you're well located and you've got a strong presence and you've got a very up-to-date or at least a good condition, good location kind of retail or office, you can generally do well, but you do need to consider these external factors that are affecting them. Whereas with multifamily, people need a place to live. Even if they don't have a job, they need a place to live. It does affect, maybe they might go with a roommate or something like that, but they still need a place to live, even if they're not in an office or buying stuff at retail.
So, I know you're educating yourself, you're moving into syndication so far, or maybe something that you foresee. What do you expect being the hardest part of the syndication business?
Let's see. I would say the main things, that I'm looking at and making sure I'm very prepared on, is going to be accounting systems. That's number one, just to make sure it's just rock solid and very, very open, meaning open book. That's one thing. The other aspect is going to be communications. Fortunately, I've got a background in that kind of stuff, so it doesn't concern me, but at the same time, I think it's really important. Having anybody who doesn't know what's going on, that's kind of a worst case scenario. And ideally, you want your investors to reinvest with you in future deals, and or they recommend you to other people for another deal. So, treating your current investors not only is the right thing to do, but it also makes great business sense because it can help you with future deals. So I want to make sure I'm really well set up on all those things. And I believe I feel very confident on that. Really, the main thing is getting investors who have real money and are more than just, hey, I'd be interested in that. But when it comes down to, here's the deadline, if you're interested, need to deposit the funds in this escrow account, just getting a real solid base of investors to choose from. I say, really, that's the biggest thing.
You said communications was your background. Give us some tips on how you plan to communicate with your team now in the syndication business. Some ways that we can implement something right now.
Sure. Yeah. And when I say that, I mean in team management and program management perspectives. And I've done some marketing as well, but primarily from those perspectives. And so I'm looking to do several things. Number one, monthly updates to provide to the investors. I'll be doing that. I'll also be doing meetings, so basically webinar kinds of approaches where it'll be online. Anybody can jump in, anybody can ask questions, that kind of thing. That would more likely be quarterly because, and actually after a while, from what I've heard, the number of people kind of drop off those after they realize things are going smoothly, but they tend to show up to the first ones. But at the same time, to provide it as an option, and to emphasize that the online communications that may be emailed to them as far as a summary of what's going on recently, that the call to action is if they have any questions, that we are here to answer them. And it's not just limited to email, here's our phone, here's our email, that kind of thing. And then of course there's all the formal stuff in terms of the annual reporting and all the accounting and things like that. But the communications I'm talking about is more to keep people up to date, make sure they know the good and the bad. And I believe it's not only important or to show, okay, there was a big, the roof got torn off in a tornado or whatever. Insurance is handling it, but just so that kind of thing, that they know, and it'll also increase the trust, the mutual trust. If they just hear everything's going swimmingly, then frankly, not everything goes perfectly. So they'd probably be more suspicious if everything goes swimmingly. So I want to make sure they have the whole story. Right.
So, Scott, what would you say is the top reason people, don't get into the business or maybe even fail?
In investing in general or syndications?
Mostly syndication business.
Sure. So I would say a couple things, but I would say if you ask me to give you one reason, the one reason is it seems complex and difficult. And if you hire the right team, meaning you get a good attorney on your team and a good accountant or CPA on your team, it doesn't have to be difficult at all. You have to pay them money, but at the same time, you pay them money and they earn their money, and they help make that part simple for you. I would say, to give a part two on that answer, the second one is related to just getting that investor base, feeling confident to tell people about what they're doing, to actually accumulate an investor base, to feel that they personally are actually ready to do it. They may not have the experience or feel that they're ready to take other people's money. So I think there's also a confidence and experience issue. That would probably be the second reason as well.
Awesome. Well, you've been a great guest, Scott. Tell the listeners how they can get in touch with you or learn more about your business.
Sure. The easiest way is to go to my website, which is bonvolo.com for Bonvolo Real Estate Investments. And that's BON as in November, V as in Victor, OLO.com. And there I have a phone number as well as a way you can reach me by email. So you can learn about us. And if you want to contact us, all the information's there.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Scott. And thanks. I'm grateful for each listener that's listening today. And I hope you'll go to the Facebook group and join so you can connect with people like Scott, and we can all learn more about this business together and ask questions and interact. I hope you'll subscribe and leave a review and rating, and we will talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by Life Bridge Capital. Life Bridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. Life Bridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.